think she actually has anything different to sell, though, Paula, than her predecessors? Because Graham did a column pulling out snippets from old press releases where it just sounded so much the same. The message sounded so similar.
It does sound so similar. I mean, this is the message that Ed Stelmach tried to sell. This is the message that Alison Redford tried to sell. It's a hard message to sell because every time a duck lands on a tailings pond, every time the temperature goes up, it is not easy to convince people that we've made substantive changes to the way we produce our energy, because in all honesty, we haven't made them yet. We've talked about making them, but it's not like when Notley came to power magically, everything got pretty and re-greened in Fort McMurray. So it's a very similar songbook from which she is singing. And the problem always is, here in Alberta, we think we're pretty important. And at the end of the day, we have 4 million people here. And America is full of cities that have more than 4 million people in them. I mean, we are not as big a power player on the international stage as we like to think that we are. So every time a premier from here goes to Washington, D.C., they take some mid-level meetings with people who I'm sure have some degree of power and influence. But right now, I mean, Malcolm Mays drew a very pointed cartoon for us this week that showed, Notley trying to come in with sort of happy talk as the Republicans and Democrats train their sort of
their cannons,
their boat guns on each other. I think this is the sort of thing she has to do. She has to do it as much for domestic consumption as anything else. It's sort of a rite of passage for an Alberta premier, but I think people in Washington, D.C. are a wee bit distracted right now.
Those darn primaries.
Why? Yeah.
Emma, since we have the benefit of you covering the Saskatchewan legislature up until very recently, I'd love to get a sense of how common was it for Premier Brad Wall to make trips to, hither and yon. I don't know. Did he go to DC a lot, making Saskatchewan's case?
He went every now and again, but I mean, it's different too in Saskatchewan. The Sask Party government, I think, had spent something in the range of $3 million between 2009 and 2014 to pay a lobbying firm in the States to lobby those people. Probably similar people to the ones that Notley met with. I don't know that for sure. I have no factual backing, Brad Wall. Please don't call. But that was kind of seemed to be the route that they took. And it's interesting that you made the point about Alberta only having 4 million people. Well, Saskatchewan only has 1 million people and change. So I would argue it's an even smaller deal if they went there. Of course, Saskatchewan would not see it that way. No. Again, Brad, please don't call. Yeah. But every now and again, I think every premier does feel that need to sell their message on the international stage. But I think a lot of the time it is often for local consumption rather than trying to make an actual difference, because let's face it, there's really not much that you can do.